Okay, so yeah, I want to first of all start off by greeting the extinguished gentleman. I remember one time we were at a shul and we had this rabbi who couldn't talk English well, so he gets up and instead of saying distinguished, he gets up and says extinguished. So I want to honor my extinguished gentleman. And then he continues in saying, and I want to undress the crowd, but that didn't go down well. I want to address you. Anyway, I want to address you. So I was thinking about earlier today, what to talk about. Honestly, these days I'm giving more shiurim than I've ever given before. So it's like the amount of creativity you need to always come up with new concepts. You don't want to repeat yourself. Otherwise you get bored of your own self, which is not exactly fun. So I've been trying very hard to come up with something interesting and different. And most of you are not on Facebook, you're not at that generation, but about 2 weeks ago, I rejoined Facebook after about 13 months being off. And one of the things I learned is that everybody has opinions about everything. And thank God I joined just at the time of Corona and racism and local South African politics. So Baruch Hashem, it's a fantastic time to be opinionated, because literally you could have opinions about everything and anything. Is racism real? It's not real. They're all this, they're all that. Every guy is like, and it's amazing how everyone's so predictable. This guy is always taking the right-wing approach. This person's taking the left-wing approach. This person's convinced everyone's racist. This person's convinced nobody's racist. It's like this. Okay. So I was thinking to myself, very often you start off a shiur, you start off a conversation, you ask people, what do you think? So what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you think about the price of cheese in China? What do you think about the South African government? What do you think about racism? What do you think about Corona and our reaction to Corona? What do you think? It's just a lot of what do you think, what do you think, what do you think? But honestly, the true question shouldn't be what do you think, it's what do you feel? Because most of our opinions have nothing to do with thought. They're feelings. So for example, if I ask you, is racism a problem in the Jewish community? Very few people are going to sit down and actually say, okay, let me look at the data. Let me think about all the conversations I've had with people over the years. Yeah, no. Well, based on the facts on the ground, I would say that there is or isn't. It's usually like this. Are you kidding me? Of course there is. Are you kidding me? Of course there's not. Who do you think you are? Right away, when we ask our opinions about something, very few of our opinions are opinions, they're feelings. Because the definition of an opinion is it's intellectual. It comes from cup, it comes from your brain. The definition of a feeling is it comes from your heart. It's your gut reaction, it's your response, it's your intuition, whatever you want to call it. It is your impulse, it's what you feel. Most of our life is not based on thinking, it's based on feeling. Now, there's nothing wrong with feeling as long as we're honest that it's a feeling. But if I claim to have a thought, an opinion, and truly it's a feeling, then you're not being fair. So I'll give you an example. Should shuls reopen? The big controversy, the 2-week hiatus that the chief rabbi asked for is coming up in a few days. And as of Tuesday on the 16th, we're going to be once again having the conversation, should shuls open? Today there's going to be a meeting with the rabbis. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Anyway, so every single person has an opinion. Better yet, they have a feeling. Some people are convinced this whole Corona thing is a conspiracy. I just saw somebody posting on Facebook that even Forbes found a scientist who claims that this whole Corona was manufactured in a lab. Great, all the conspiracy theorists were right. I go to check out the Forbes website, because it's the first time in my life that a conspiracy's been proven right. And what do I see? Forbes backtracks, and pretty much it comes out that this fellow who claims in Sweden that it was made in the lab is a guy that works for a certain company, and he has a certain agenda because he's trying to create a vaccine, et cetera, et cetera. So he has an agenda to make it out there and make a name for himself. And almost all scientists disagree with him, and they claim it came from an animal, a bat, whatever. So you saw right away which people went and forwarded that article. The people who are naturally conspiracy theorists. And they right away go to say, of course, I told you, China's out to get there, out to destroy the world. It was all created in a lab. And the people who disagree are the people who never believe in conspiracies. The point is, a conspiracy theorist is usually feeling. There's some people who just feel the whole world is lying to them. America took down the Twin Towers. Neil Armstrong didn't walk on the moon. Napoleon never existed. Australia is not a continent. And by the way, Google it. There are people who believe Australia is not a continent. If I could find it to you, let me see if I could do it. Conspiracy. Does Australia exist? Australia. It's honestly unbelievable that it actually exists, but there are people that believe that Australia doesn't exist. It's a full-on conspiracy made up by some people. And yeah. Now, they actually think they're thinking. And now this is an article from The Guardian. Okay, let's open it up and then I could share it with you. Here it goes. Zoom, open, share screen. Okay, here we go. Believe it or not, Australia doesn't exist and other bizarre geographic conspiracies that won't go away. A theory denying the existence of a country is gaining ground, but the suggestion that countries and cities are mere figments of our imagination is a meme that dates back to the birth of the web. Australia doesn't exist. The signs were there the whole time. In what country is the only thing more poisonous than the snakes, the spiders? How did we ever believe that kangaroos were a thing? This discovery, believed by some to be a joke or a conspiracy theory, has been circulating on social media in recent weeks after being formulated on Reddit in early 2017. Except it turns out not to be the only theory of its kind. Through the years, online sleuths have found that all sorts of places don't exist. High on the list is Finland, the country some believe lies between Russia and Sweden, and that allegedly fought a valiant rear-ground action against a Soviet invasion in the run-up to the Second World War. This theory was also born on Reddit in 2015. Finland, the user Rarigan explained, was merely a fictional creation designed to create fishing quotas to aid the export of sushi to Japan from Russia. Honestly, if you were looking for entertainment this morning, here we go. Last summer, another Reddit user suggested that the Italian region of Molise, population 300,000, doesn't exist, apparently as a result of an Italian in-joke, while Brazilians have had for at least 5 years an online theory that the western state of Acre doesn't exist, or else is a land that time forgot still populated by dinosaurs. The problem is that these things are actually, people believe it. There are people right now who actually believe that Australia doesn't exist. Now, there are other people who believe in flat Earth. And there's actually a flat Earth conference. I have to show you this flat Earth conference to just prove you how many things people think, but that actually has no basis on reality. And they think it's a thought, but ultimately it's a feeling, because if you were looking for the facts, you would never, never, never buy into this nonsense. But most people don't think, they feel. I remember watching an article, I think it was on CBS, so one of the things where they actually go down to interview people that come to this Flat Earth conference. And here I go. I'm going to share this thing with you because, again, it's too good to be true. And my point is, I'm just going to share with you more and more how people make up stories. Here it goes. The Flat Earth conspiracy is spreading around the globe.
Today is the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 lunar landing, but for the people who live in an alternate fantasy land, that being about 5 to 6% of the public who believe the moon landing was fake, well then today is just another day. Given today's historic anniversary, I thought maybe it would be interesting to explore the thought process of somebody who just thinks it's a hoax And there's one individual whose name keeps coming up when you look into this subject, but then I found some video. I saw this ugly encounter that I think he shall remain nameless, at least on my program, initiated with Apollo 11 astronaut Buzz Aldrin, that ends with this.
Come with me, Buzz.
You really like it, didn't you, Coach?
You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself.
Away from me.
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
Coward, liar. He didn't fully get out the word thief, but that's where it was headed. Needless to say, once I saw this, I said, we can't have this guy on. No charges were filed against Aldrin. With me now is Dr. Ashley Landrum, an assistant professor and psychologist at Texas Tech University who attended something called the Flat Earth International Conference near Raleigh, North Carolina in 2017. Dr. Landrum, whether it's the Earth is flat, whether it's OJ didn't really do it, whether it's we didn't land on the moon, what I most want to say to folks who buy into these is, wait a minute, do you know how many individuals would have had to have been involved and able to keep a secret? Why doesn't that resonate with people who buy into these thoughts?
Well, for a couple of reasons. One, many conspiracy theorists or people who believe that these theories are true will tell you it's really not that many people who have to buy into it, but that there's something called compartmentalization where only one or two of the sort of top people in charge of the conspiracy know everything. And as you go further and further down, then people just know what other people have told them. Two, some of the people who are conspiracy theorists really wouldn't put it past authorities and other officials who have power to hold these secrets. And there's actually research showing that people who believe conspiracies would actually be willing to engage in a conspiracy themselves.
Okay, how did that make you feel, gentlemen? Can we go on? Because it doesn't end. Next thing I'm going to share with you, here we go. Just because, why not? Flat Earth supporters now plan an Antarctica expedition to the edge of the world. Now, this is on Forbes, okay? I'm only showing you legitimate websites. I'm not making up stories. This is March last year. And basically, they're creating a full-on Flat Earth International Conference founder, Robbie Davidson, with Logan Paul. They were going to go to Antarctica because they're convinced flat Earth, that the Antarctica doesn't exist, etc., 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 ad nauseum. You could go sick from all this stuff. So then you start wondering how people believe in Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is one of the big anti-Jewish conspiracies of all time, officially created in the early 1900s to late 1800s, claiming a story that a bunch of groups of the Elders of Zion sit down and figure out how to run this world. And this is considered one of the greatest selling books of all time. Protocols of the Elders of Zion, the book, has been literally selling millions of copies, including in non-anti-Semitic countries like Japan, where people actually believe this stuff. So when you realize how little, the difference between being an animal and a human being is that animals don't think. They only have a heart. Their brain is just a function that facilitates the process of the body, but they don't have the power of objective thought. Versus the human being who has the power to actually think objectively, and yet they just don't do it. Okay, I want to read you now. For some reason, my Wikipedia page doesn't open the way it should, but it still has the data. Here is the Protocols of Elder Zion story. Okay, this was a fabricated anti-Semitic text purporting the Jewish plan for global domination. Was first published in Russia, as I said, in early 1903. Disseminated internationally in the early 20th century. According to claims made by its publishers, the protocols are the minutes of 24 sessions of a meeting of the 12 tribes of Israel, during which Jewish leaders discussed their goal of global Jewish hegemony by subverting the morals of Gentiles, blah, 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 blah. Henry Ford, from Ford Motors, funded printing of 500,000 copies that were distributed throughout the United States in the 1920s. Distillations of it were assigned by some German teachers as if factual to be read by German school children after the Nazis came to power in 1933, despite being exposed as fraudulent by the British newspaper The Times in 1921 and the Frankfurter Zeitung in 1924. It remains wildly available in numerous languages in print and on the internet, and continues to be presented by neo-fascist, fundamentalist, and anti-Semitic groups as a genuine document. The political scientist Stephen Bronner described it as probably the most influential work of anti-Semitism ever written. What the Communist Manifesto from Karl Marx was for Marxism, the fictitious protocols is for anti-Semitism. So you actually start wondering, how much do people think? Because so many things around this world are based on conspiracies. I mean, I'll be honest, in my opinion, one of the chief conspiracy theorists is Donald Trump himself. And he manages to get millions of people to buy in this conspiracy theories. I mean, he was the one that claimed Obama wasn't born in the United States. And claimed when he was running against Ted Cruz that Ted Cruz's father was helping the guy who killed JFK. He'll just make up stories. Whether he believes in it himself or not, it's irrelevant. He disseminates it, people buy into it, and he has millions of people. Okay, many people vote for him because they just don't want to vote for Democrats, but there's many people who vote for him because they actually buy his nonsense. People are so quick to believe nonsense, and that's why it's so easy to see why certain religions, because not all religions are created equal, some religions make absolutely no sense, they have zero logic to them, and nevertheless these religions have, or ways of life, have been incredibly successful because people are gullible. Why are people gullible? Because they don't think. And that was actually one of the big arguments of the communist regime, that you need to have a group of elites who run the country on behalf, because everybody else is a bunch of dunces, everybody else is a bunch of klutzes, everybody else is a bunch of idiots. And in truth, without sounding patronizing, there's a truth to that, and that is that most people do follow sheep mentality. The problem is what these guys did with it. They pretty much created a bunch of dictators on the top to dictate the sheep. That's not democracy. Democracy says, teach people how to think. The problem with democracies in these days is that we're not teaching how people think. We're getting people to vote in a democratic way for ideas that aren't ideas. In other words, what's happening in democracy today, instead of it being a culture of thinking people, and the leaders are encouraging people to think and then vote based on their thought, it's no. I'm brainwashing you, but I'm still not a dictator because you voted for me. I mean, after all, look, I got 55% of the vote. It's totally democratic. But in order to get the 55% of the vote, I sold you a bunch of hogwash. I convinced you a bunch of lies. I educated you in a way that you don't know how to think for yourself. You don't know objective thought. And then you voted for me, and I was voted in democratically. Mazel tov. And that's why democracy is falling apart, because democracy is based on the foundational idea that people think for themselves. Now, I could talk about the global issue, but I'm talking about, let's focus specifically on our communal issue, on the Jewish issue. Jews were known as the people of the book. We're known as people who are supposed to think. But for the life of mine, if I can't think, if I cannot think on my own and make opinions that are not just the herd, then what is wrong with me? I'm losing, I'm missing the greatest opportunity of being human. Obviously, the greatest opportunity of being human is being in a relationship with Hashem. But second to the greatest opportunity of being human is to think. That's what makes us different than animals. That's the difference between the animal kingdom and the human kingdom. The animal kingdom has no thought, no imagination, no ability to think out of the box, no ability to think objectively based on facts. We have the ability, and yet most of us squander it. What everyone else says, that's what I say. Yeah, this, that, Ramaphosa is great, then he's not great, then this is good, then Donald Trump is great, then he's not great, then this, then that. Israel should do this, Israel shouldn't do this. And sometimes you're like, guys, you don't have to be that loyal to a party. Be loyal to your brain. Think. That's why I hate about politics, because politics by definition expects that if you love a party, you love them whatever they do. So if you're a DA guy, then whatever DA does is fantastic. If you're an ANC fellow or EFF fellow, everything they do is fantastic. If you're in Israel, Likud, everything Likud. Kahol Lavan, Bennett, it's Bennett. Whatever they do is fantastic. But how can you do that? How can you be loyal to a party which doesn't have an idea and fluctuates all the time? You have to use your objective mind. Sometimes you agree with the party stance, sometimes you don't. And one of the things Lubavitch Rebbe always used to tell Chabad is never to get affiliated with a political party, specifically in Israel. And there are many reasons for it, but one of the reasons I believe is honestly, because if you become loyal to a party, then you have to go wherever the party goes, even if the party goes against your ideals. So no, be loyal to ideals, whether it is a full Israel, a Torah Israel, to make a healthy rabbinate based on Orthodox foundations, whatever the principles are. And then each election you look and you see which party fits your principles. Sometimes party X, sometimes party Y. But if you're just loyal to a party, I vote Likud no matter what they do. Really? Why? Why? Why does anybody deserve your loyalty, even if they go against principles? Unless I don't have any principles. I should be making decisions in my life based on principles, not based on what everyone else says. So for example, shul's opening up. Suddenly I'm already getting lots of messages from a lot of good, well-intentioned people. Rabbi, open the shuls now. Let's go. Let's discuss this based on principles. Here are the principles at discussion. Sanctity of life. Will people use their own discretion? Should you trust people to use their own discretion? Or as leader of a community, do you have to make decisions for them sometimes? Those aren't easy answers. Some people will tell you, oh, who do the leaders think they are? They're making decisions on our behalf. Let people be responsible. There's validity to that. On the other hand, there's a principle that says, I'm a leader and my job is to look at the facts. And the facts are that most people will not discipline themselves and follow all the protocols, so why should I open? Now, if you can't see validity in both arguments, then I'm sorry. I think you're just based on feelings, because there is validity. I don't think it's patronizing for a leader to make a decision based on the facts of the ground. At the same time, I understand the person who says, trust people to do the right thing. It's true, both of them. But either choice you make is going to anger some people. If I don't open the shul in a week's time because I don't trust the elderly people to stay away, or I don't trust the people from not shaking hands, or I don't trust, I'm not confident that we're going to be able to protect every life, some people are going to get angry. On the other hand, if I open the shul and sit there saying, you know what, I'm a rabbi, I'm not a supervisor, I'm not a kindergarten teacher, I'm a rabbi, everybody do what you want to do. This is the protocols, keep it, don't keep it, I'm not your policeman, figure it out yourself. Other people are going to get angry. Because again, most of us are not thinking on thought. If we think through our brains, even if we disagree with somebody, we'll still be able to appreciate their point of view. Because the way I see it, some rabbis will open their shuls and some rabbis won't open the shuls. That's the way it's going to play out. I don't think it's going to be a blanket rule. So each shul or each group of shuls is going to have to make their own discretionary decisions. And we're going to make decisions based on the way we interpret the facts. But if somebody's thinking in their mind, even if they disagree with the bottom line, at least they can understand the thought process, why we're doing what we're doing. But if it's only based on feelings, feelings has no room for somebody else. I feel it should be closed, and I feel it should be open. But feelings don't allow, usually, think about it like this. When I'm feeling something, I'm feeling happy, I can't really feel sad at the same moment. Especially a child who hasn't matured in their mind and their full emotions. Kabbalah explains that an adult, their mind controls a bit of their emotions. That's why we never get as excitable as kids, and hopefully we don't get as angry as kids, unless we're still children in an adult body. A child, on the other hand, it's extremely intense emotions, extreme happiness, extreme devastation. And you only have one feeling at a time. You could switch from one feeling to another, but at the moment, the kid is either thrilled they got the new bike, or they're devastated because someone else took their bike. What's the definition of maturity? Mind. And mind can tolerate various ideas. If you cannot handle various different perspectives at the same time, know this, it's coming from the heart, because the heart doesn't have room for two emotions at the same time. The brain does. The brain can tolerate many different ideas. I hear. I also hear. Not every idea is valid. I'm not saying the brain has to tolerate every idea. I don't have to tolerate the idea of a racist or an anti-Semite because they're fundamentally wrong. But that most areas in our life are not black or white, they're gray. If we cannot accept grayness and that things are complex, then I believe we're wasting one of the great opportunities of being alive, and that is dealing with complexity. I have a relative who will stay anonymous. This individual struggles with the fact that life has gray areas. In this person's perspective, life is black or white. There's no such thing as gray. It's either right or wrong. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. Most decisions of life are messy. Do you go spend time with your wife right now? Or do you go do your exercise? That's a small decision. Do you build up financial stability, but on the expense of a little time of family? Or you just live hand to mouth, but you're there with your family the whole time? Whoever claims that's a simple answer is lying. It's not. You might follow your gut and do one of them, but don't claim that there's no validity to both points of view. Should your grandchildren come visit you these days? It's a mixed up question. On the one hand, loneliness sucks. It's terrible. On the other hand, protective life. Both positions have validity. And the truth is, if I used my thought, I would have realized that both positions are not so different. Because at the root, we're both trying to do the same thing. We're both trying to protect people. The question is, what's the best way to protect? By keeping them isolated or by giving them social interaction. But the agenda is the same. And then I could appreciate both points of view. But if it's feelings, no, absolutely not. We're not going to visit grandma. Never, 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 never. Hey, what's the point of view? Think, tacht. So for me, that's my rant of the day. My rant of the day is the following: that each and every one of us has an incredible opportunity to use our thought to think through things, to analyze. And Baruch Hashem, these days we have more time than ever. Like one of the big gifts for me I'm finding this time is, usually when I'm in shul, things happen on the moment. A lot of things happen. You walk into the bracha and then there's a faribel going on over there and there's a chaos in the kitchen. And you have to make decisions on the moment. And often you can't think things through. The gift of not having to make decisions on the moment, because usually I'm getting a phone call, I have time to think about it, then I can respond. I feel like I'm making much healthier decisions. Most of us, when we make a decision within 30 seconds, it's not a decision based on this. It's a decision based on that. And sometimes it's right and sometimes it's wrong. But if we paused and we said, 1 second, let's think about this. I have a rule. Whenever I have to write an email that's a bit controversial or a response to somebody, I sleep on it. Because chances are by the time I wake up, my emotions are a bit softer and I think a little straighter. I can't stand when people send emails or WhatsApps that are full of emotion in the moment. You are guaranteed to say something you'll regret. When you're emotional, shut your phone, shut your mouth, go dig your head into a pillow and watch TV. I don't care. Stumm. Once your brain is working again, then you can start talking. But when the emotions talk, boy, are emotions idiotic. And what I'm finding going on social media is there's too much emotions and too little brains. So l'chaim to each and every one of us, that we should actually use our brain more and our hearts for the right things like love and emotion and everything else. But otherwise, keep our